Good afternoon, everyone. And I made sure to remember to say good afternoon because we are 1 minute past 12. Apologies for the slight delay. But welcome to Adobe Live. I am here with Robert Hranitzky, and we are going to be talking all about After Effects. I don't think we've had an After Effects session in a while. And Robert, we're here for 90 minutes. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit in a pizza coma right now. Just finished my lunch a little bit earlier than usual, but I'm feeling good, and I'm super happy to be joining the UK stream now for the first time to share some After Effects love with the UK. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the reactions are going to be and what you have to say about it. I've prepared a few things, so
Yeah,
wait.
I'm personally very keen for this. So my background in After Effects is more down the sort of typography and titles route of things. But I've always been really interested in the way that animation and those types of special effects work. So I'm personally going to be an audience member, and I'm going to have to remember to pay attention to the chat. So if you're watching this on YouTube, that's cool. You can carry on sitting there and taking part in the viewing. But if you'd like to join in with the conversation, please join us over on Behance. And we've got a chat going live already. A number of people already there talking, and first mention I've seen is that it's pretty grey outside in the UK. It is 100% rain all day today. So that is a perfect time to be going through After Effects.
Is that unusual for the UK? I'm just...
We have to remind
I'm
ourselves
kidding.
that it is usual.
I'm kidding.
It's
But
a
to be
surprise
honest,
even when it's the same.
it's the same right here. It's gray and really not nice, but it has been nice.
It's yeah, perfect for After Effects. So After Effects to many people can of course be quite intimidating. So hopefully we can get some sort of tidbits on various things. And yeah, all the different processes. I'll be interested to know your organization of After Effects, because I know at times I can get a little bit lost in where I'm going, and that freaks me out because I'm quite an organizational freak when it comes to all my stuff. So this is going to be quite a fun one. So how would you like to start? What stuff have you got to show, or you wanna run through?
Well, I mean, I would start with maybe just introducing myself a little bit for the UK audience, for those that don't know me or haven't seen any German streams or anything else from my end. I've been working as a designer for about 20 years now. I mean, even before I studied design, I've been working as a freelancer, so never been employed, but always working by myself. Although I'm a what you would call freelancer, it's more like a one-man studio with a full service thing. But also the one man is not quite true, because for about, I would say, probably half the projects, I'm working together with some fantastic colleagues and friends, so we can expand our capabilities in terms of what we can offer, as well as volume. So it's a range of 2D, 3D animation, motion graphics, opening titles for films, explainer videos, trailers, showroom stuff, really a mix of commercial as well as fiction stuff for film and TVs. But generally everything that is animated or motion picture, moving images, keyframe involved is what I love most. But that doesn't disqualify any other area of creativity for myself, which means that I'm still doing a lot of traditional design work. I have because we're chatting about this just before, that you have your background with typography, and you do a lot of photography, and it's the same for me. I do a lot of photography as well. I'm not too outgoing with this. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call myself a photographer, but I always say if I wouldn't be doing animation and motion graphics, I probably would be a photographer, because that's like my second next passion, I would say. Traveling, if you can travel, not like right now, but capturing moments and everything. And it also helps you to really educate your eye and your mind and the way you frame things, and that helps again to be a better artist in general, but also a better artist in the CG area, to replicate things better. So yeah, it's
it's definitely looking through the lens of things, just framing things and just adding essentially just a border to what you're looking at. It makes you so much more intentional in how you absorb things and what you create later down the line as well.
Exactly. And I learned that also understanding the physics of a camera over the years helped me tremendously to become a better artist, because once you understand why there are imperfections in the image, why there is what is bokeh, how does it happen, how is aperture and everything involved in that, how does the shutter work, what does the shutter mean for motion blur, for example. All these kind of things come into play and make you a better artist at the end of the day. So that's why, like, when I do talks or when I teach at universities, I always tell the young folks that the first thing they should do is get a camera, get a DSLR camera. It shouldn't be the latest best one. Can be a 5, 6, 7, 8-year old one. Familiarize yourself with a camera and learn to work with the camera and appreciate the camera, and this will eventually make you a better artist. So that's one of the things that I learned over the course. But I was just wondering if Tim in the background has managed to get the reel ready, and I just heard that he is ready. So I'd like to run that. Because, as you say, images and videos say more than words. So here's a little collection of some of our latest projects.
Amazing stuff. That is quite a collection of work. How many years does that span?
There's quite some old stuff in there as well, but I would say the majority is about the last 2-3 years.
Wow.
There's stuff in there that is maybe 5-6 years old. So yeah, it's again, it's a mix of stuff that I did alone, but also a lot of stuff that was done with in collaboration with fantastic colleagues. So we have like a creative hub here. We're sharing our space. So I'm in my studio in Munich right now. So not from home at this moment, but generally working from home. So we can bounce back and forth projects, and it's also very nice to to get a second pair of eyes to look at something, just to to test things, just to, even if the person is not working on that particular project, it's good to get an honest feedback of what could be better or what's working, what's not, and yeah. So
you mentioned that you do a lot of like a wide variety of work with product work and film titles and even like extra effects and things. What grabs your attention most? Like if a brief came into you tomorrow, what would get you most excited?
It's pretty easy, to be honest, to answer that one, because for me it would be opening titles. That's if I could choose every project, and if I would have the luxury of saying no to anything else and just choosing the cherries, it would be opening titles. I mean, for me, that's like because I always wanted to, like, not always, but for a long time, I was inspired by movies like Star Wars and Pixar movies and everything. So I was intrigued by creating worlds or create something where there once was nothing technically. So this can be a logo, but this can also be like an entire world or a story or something that you're creating. And I'm probably not good enough to be a filmmaker, probably like a proper filmmaker. So I'm not sure, but certainly being someone that works on opening titles, it's like a mini movie in the movie or in the TV show, whatever it is, so
Absolutely.
And plus it will cover like all my passion, because I couldn't let go of working with some cool type animation and typography and choosing a font, because I just like it too much. And when you look at opening titles, it combines everything. It can be 2D, 3D, it can have, or it should have titles and type in some way. It can be anything, it involves sound design, it involves composition and everything. It also a little bit of storytelling. What do you want to communicate with the title? So if there's any titles projects out there that you want to shoot towards myself, feel free.
That's so true though, that it's almost a short film in itself, because you are the first impact of the movie that you're watching, and
totally
you want to tell the movie without telling people the spoiler. You could ruin a film for someone in the opening titles, but at the same time, you are the first impact in many ways. And yeah, there's just so much weight to it, and especially on the typography. I mean, for me, typography is the backbone of design, and without it, everything else just kind of falls apart. So focusing on that is, I'd say that's definitely a smart move to narrow it down if that was your option.
But it's really hard, because it's kind of tricky, and it's not just like a German thing or an American thing or whatever industry you're looking at, where the content is coming from. It's a general problem that you have to have. You need to have worked on a film, for example, to be working on a film, right? So it's kind of like, it's like the chicken egg thing, it's how do you get into that when the requirement is that you need to have some experience in that? So it's so that's why it's difficult to get in there. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in a few productions, but still it's still a hard thing to do, and hard thing to get your hands on.
That's an interesting point you made, actually, about like different cultures and communities. Do you also do translation of your titles, or does that get offloaded to sort of smaller like artworking agencies that do those things?
That's a good question. I mean, for opening title stuff, so far in what I have been involved, it has not been translated in terms of from like a German title into English. I think there was one that also had to work in English, but I did that myself because it was a rather simpler one. But mostly the title should work as as English as well as a German title, as kind of like a name. But that happens a lot with commercial productions, where you have, like, we do a lot of product trailers for Wacom, for example. I've been working with Wacom for, I don't know, 15 years or so. So we do a lot of those product trailers, those promos. When a new tablet comes out, you have the pen floating, and then some text comes in and explains, 4,000 pressure sensitive levels. And that has to be, of course, translated to, I think it's 18 languages or something. and then it's going to be it's quite tricky to do that, because different formats, different characters, sizes, and so on. And of course, in one thing that can be one word in English might be 10 words in German. So
it's funny you mentioned that, because so when I worked at Disney was when responsive design was sort of really coming about, and there was this notion of mobile first when designing websites and things. And I had to work on I think it was 23 markets with about 18 different languages between them. And so we had mobile first as a design option, but then I also took the approach of German first, because if it works in German, there's a good chance it works in every language, just because of the length of the words and everything.
French is also like super long in terms of words. And so but it's good fun. So I can't complain. The main thing is that I'm happy with what I'm doing. So it's the drive is from within, the passion and the love for the work, and that's a good thing. And also the second thing that I really like to mention is sharing and giving back, like in streams like today. Eventually we'll be doing more trainings and courses online in the future, but this is something, I've always been involved in events and being a speaker at this and that for many years. But in the last few years, it really picked up, and I got some good feedback. And I think it gives a lot of value to everyone that you can reach if you can teach something that she or he didn't know before, and helps him or her to advance in his career. So so I really like that, and I was lucky enough to have some mentors and teachers myself that helped me along the way. So I'm trying to give back some of that and share some inspiration as well as some tips and tricks along the way.
Yeah, nice one. The chat is flowing very fast, by the way. I think just to try and catch up with things, there was a lot of complimentary comments on your work. I think everyone was very blown away with that video. We've actually got a question in here, though, of what is your typical input when you're working on a collaborative project? So I guess, like, what's your main focus? Is it on the 3D side, the type side, movement, or do you have like an overall? Are you the top dog?
It's a very good question. First of all, because indeed it's difficult to split up things. For many projects where we are splitting the work between 2 or 3 or 4 persons, even usually it's the one who brings the project on board is kind of like taking the director's seat, more or less, because that person is also usually the one that is in charge with responsible to create the project, and also in contact with the client, doing all the communication. So to be honest, for many projects, it is the way that that is like my client, or a client from my end that I was lucky to find and to get in touch with. And then I look what does the client need. And like 10-15 years ago, I was under the impression and illusion of being able to know everything and to do everything and learn everything. Over the years, I learned that it's simply not possible. That even if you look at tools like 3D, we use Cinema 4D as our main 3D tool. It's just such a massive program. If you're intimidated by After Effects, After Effects is like a plugin, compared to what you can do with Cinema 4D. No offense against After Effects. It's like my favorite tool. But in terms of complexity, looking at a 3D application, no matter if it's Cinema 4D or Blender or Maya or whatever, the complexity is huge. You have to know about modeling, lighting, texturing, animation, timing, rigging, programming in terms of how do you want to link stuff together. So it's so complex. So you have people that are just good at lighting, or just good at character animation, or just good at rigging or texturing, and maybe don't have too much knowledge in other areas, but they're really good at this. And I found over the years to also as a strength to admit to yourself that no, I can't do that, and I'm super open about it. That, for example, Max was sitting right now in front of me, opposite of the room. He's probably smiling, not sure, but and he is way better than I am in Cinema 4D, and I'm fine with that, because he can do his thing, and I can do my thing. So for example, I can do typography animation better than he can do so, and he's fine with that as well. But having I put in the overall vision and direction for something, and I know who to bring on board with certain skill sets, and know how to direct certain skill sets to get to the final result. That is also some kind of strength that is important, at least in my opinion. So realizing that is good. And also, as a quote, I think it was not sure if it was Ed Catmull from Pixar who said, if you're the smartest in the room, you're doing something wrong. You should surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Absolutely. That's why I love doing these Adobe Lives. I get to hang out with people who are teaching me stuff and experience and everything. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, don't worry. I'll send you the bill, So.
I'll just forward it to Adobe. It's fine.
Okay. Let's do a split. Okay. All right. So
should we have a look at some visual stuff?
So actually, I was super brave today, I guess, because I've just installed the latest version of After Effects that just came out today. At least for I don't know if it's overall everywhere in the world, but I just saw the update for version 18 pop up. So
couldn't resist.
I couldn't resist, because I knew what was coming in there. So there's a couple of new 3D goodies in there that we might take a look.
We've actually had a comment in the chat asking about if other people have upgraded. So what a coincidence to say that at the same time.
Yeah, it's all planned. No. So fingers crossed everything will work out fine. I didn't specifically prepare stuff for the new release, but I have a few things that I have prepared, and we can do this rather freestyle here to bounce back and forth with a few ideas. But generally, what I wanted to do today is to basically build this with you from scratch. So technically, it's going to be like this futuristic robotic arm. I was very inspired by that Bjork music video, Full of Love, I think it's called. I don't know if you know that one, where you have like Bjork as a robot or cyborg being put together with robotic arms and stuff. So always like a very white, clean, bluish, sterile look to it, and I really love that futuristic look. So technically,
reminded me of Wall-E as well.
Yes,
there's definitely a Axiom 8 sort of vibe about it.
So how can you do that in After Effects and all the tricks involved? There's going to be a lot of parenting, a lot of how do you import your files the right way? How do you change anchor points, expressions? We also going to talk about exporting your stuff and what you can do, and some tips and tricks about how I render my things and how I upload them for client reviews. So it's going to be pretty packed, and I think there's a lot to be able to show with this. I mean, even just to break it down, what is all happening in here. It's just like a bunch of files, and this arm technically is just a file from Adobe stock, basically, that I downloaded yesterday.
Is it completely flat, or it's layered with the different arm movements?
No, it was completely flat. So
okay.
It came in like, not like this, but it was it was a little bit more angled. I can look it up which file that was. But of course it was all flat, so I had to go in and create all the separate layers. So everything, I used masks, but I flattened it all, and of course I named it all. So you have
lovely stuff.
Finger, rear, and so on. Because if you don't name it, you will see during the project that it's super important. So everything is right there, and maybe I can break it down from top to bottom. So this is the base. Of course, that was where the arm was. There was no, there was something missing, so I had to copy that and paint it just to make it back. This is the upper arm. There's like a disc in here, forearm disc. The disc is always this thing in the middle that I want to do some special stuff with it. And they have the fingers, again, divided. And then you have I called it claw. So this thing is kind of like in this little, I don't know, section here that probably can move and rotate around. So this is the base setup. I've reduced it in size. It's about 2K in resolution. It's the German version of Photoshop. So excuse my language differences here, but it's like a 1920 width, so that should be fine. And I made sure to save it as a PSD, of course. And then you can import that. And so basically the challenge is to, if you look at that, it's just one still image, actually two still images if you count the background, and what you can do with it and give life to something that is, you could pick up something from a table and put it somewhere else. But I would say let's start from scratch and start building that. And along the way, I'm going to tell you, tips and tricks and hints about how to import stuff and what to watch out for. And then if we have some time, I want to also talk about the 3D effects that are now available in After Effects.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested to know how often, when you're working on commercial projects with, say movies and stuff, and the assets that you're given, how often are they just really poor quality, and you've got to do that work of breaking it down and repainting in areas and trying to like rebuild it to what you need? How often does that happen, or do you get good quality assets all the time?
It really depends. I definitely know what you mean. I've been there. So I've had that. Thankfully, not too often.
Okay.
Mostly what we get is the logos, the brand stuff. And that is usually, of course, top notch. So based on Illustrator or EPS files. But a lot of times we also get 3D files. For example, if you have to do a 3D commercial for a product that is not existing yet, then we get the CAD files, and then we have to take them apart and get rid of everything that is inside the product, all the bits and pieces that you don't see and you don't need. So there's a lot of 3D cleanup involved to make sure that you can handle it in your application. And this might seem messy, but it's just like it is the way it is because it's a technical file. So of course you have to do that and do a lot of cleanup, but all the other stuff usually is created from scratch from our end in terms of textures and everything else. So
I always find video can be a lot more forgiving than sort of like fully outputted, flattened artwork, because things are moving so fast. And if something's not as good quality, I always just think we'll show it for less time and you can move on to the next thing. Whereas if it's a printed poster that you're working on, people can stop and scrutinize it, and they can look at the text and the rendering and think, well, where did this come from?
Totally. So just to run through that really quickly on this one, this could be, this is like my backup in terms of if we still have time for 3D, because again, this is something that is a flat image in Photoshop. So I've extracted or masked out the layers, and we could do a 3D animation with this with the new 3D tools. So just so you know that this is also there and ready for us to give it some maybe parallax movement and how you can turn a flat 2D photo into a 3D animation. So that's also ready. So but let's go with the robotic arm first. And I don't know how many people are going into After Effects to import into the file dialog and go into import file and import the files that way. The fastest way is to double click on the project window, which will open up the import dialog for you. So it's a lot faster and easier to access your files. And another thing that is quite nice, if you work on the Mac at least, is the ability to have quick look in the import dialog. That's something that I do quite often, especially if you have like multiple files. You want to make sure that you're importing the right file, so you can go through and, check out if that's the right one before clicking on import. The next thing that is super important is the way of how you import your file, which also requires for you to know what you want to do. In this case, of course, there's 3 options to import a Photoshop file. And as you've seen before, the file is layered with multiple layers. So if I would import it as a footage element, it would be like a flat PSD file. It would be the same as a JPEG. So it's something that you can't really animate unless you want to animate the whole thing as is, but we don't want to do that. And there's 2 more options in here. So there's one that is composition, and the other one is composition with retain layer sizes. And there's a fundamental difference between that. Let me show you both for people who don't know what the difference is. Maybe this might be very helpful. So I'll import that. It will ask you if you want to import the layer styles, if you have any layer styles. So you can always leave that on. That's fine. I don't have any at this point. But if you look at the file right now, let me just clear the guides for this one. You will see it came in fine. So you have all the layers as you had previously in Photoshop. So it's all good. But if you look at one of those separate layers, you will see that the finger, for example, has the dimension of the canvas of the original file. So the file is 1920 by 1147. And if you look at all the layers, you will see that all the layers have that file size.
Do you often animate in 2K? And then if you were to work on, say, like a 4K project, or if ever you need to do anything higher than that, is your sort of base setting as like a 2K and then you swap out the assets, like a proxy workflow at all?
It really depends. I can't generalize that, to be honest, because it really depends on what you do with it. So it's not so easy to swap out stuff. Usually I try to leave some headroom. So usually I try to work in the larger source scale in terms of like if I apply a texture, or for example, if this would be like a real project, I would probably have left the robotic PSD. I think it was in 5K or 6K even, the original file, and reduced it down for the stream. I probably would have left it at maybe 4K or something, just to have that headroom, and then shrink it down in case you want to have it in a higher resolution. Because going the other way is so going from small to big is more difficult than going from big to small, of course. So you could swap it, but it's sometimes you don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's where the difference is when it comes to animation versus, say, like a Premiere workflow, where it's all footage and generally all the same aspect ratio, and you're not really going to get too many disparities.
Yeah, it is, because you're gonna see, because we're gonna move anchor points and stuff, and if you move the anchor point of something, this can really mess up your files or your composition if you replace that with something that is bigger, because then it doesn't know where to put the anchor point. But then again, if you look at the size, although the base, for example, is pretty small, as well as the finger, you can still see that it has the dimensions of the full composition. And sometimes that is not desired. Sometimes it gives you an advantage. If you want to have like an animated photo and you have, and everything is from the center, then this is something that you definitely can do. However, the other option is to import it as a composition by retaining layer sizes. And again, it asks us to keep the layer styles. We can do that. And if we double click on the composition now, you will see everything looks just the same. And again, I'm just going to hide or clear the guides. I created guides just to, help myself.
Nice, they get copied over as well.
Exactly, yeah. So it helps you to align things more properly. But if you look at the individual elements now, you will see that each element has its own proper handles, right? So technically you could, grab it and do all sorts of weird stuff to it. But each layer now comes in at its own dimension. So this is 448 times 838. The fingers are small, everything has its own proper dimension, no matter how big or small something is. And this is sometimes much easier to work with, opposed to having the full on thing. So everything is in here, and we want to animate it, and we got to involve a technique that is it's called parenting, right? And Tim was joking in the pre-call with, do you need to have kids to be able to do parenting? And I totally didn't get that joke. I feel so bad, Tim, because it was a fantastic joke, I think. But that's
fully into the tech. People
totally. I was so not prepared for jokes, and then Tim just comes out of the blue and hits us with a. So yeah, now you can do this without kids, and parenting is important in After Effects as well as with kids, of course. But is a very powerful way of linking objects and layers together, because sometimes you want to have something follow something else without animating it separately. Although this might look nice, it's probably not the sexiest example, I would say, but still I think it will, as a kind of like a technical teaching metaphor, will allow you to learn a few things along the way. So we're going to use this parenting feature here. And if you don't see that, you have to probably use toggles and switches, or you have to right click to this column area, and you have to turn on parenting. Again, parenting and linking, making sure that you see that. And then you have this little noodle thing, like this curly hair, that you can pull out and you can direct it to other layers. And this is how you can link and combine layers with other layers. So technically what we want to do is, we have our base, and this is the base, and let's assume this base is attached to like a roof in a factory, and we want to have that slide in and direct move the arm along with it, because obviously the arm is attached to that. So this could be also the shoulder. The same technique that I'm applying here, I've applied to a character animation. So basically it's forward kinematics. There's like two kinematics in animation. There's inverse kinematics and there's forward kinematics. Forward kinematics is that from the shoulder forward to the hand, it will direct the animation. And inverse is if I can grab that hand and move that hand around, and everything else will move.
So the same as if you had a line that was drawn, it would draw one way or draw the other way. Is that the same interpretation?
Exactly. A little more complex because the way it things are connected and aligned. Doing inverse kinematics in After Effects is a little bit more tricky and allows a few more steps than forward kinematics. But I've been using the same technique to rig a character, like a 2D character, and to create a walk cycle, and the person is just walking around like a 2D drawing. So this can work with the very same technique as well. And of course, you can do all the other things when learning this. So what we want to do is, I want to attach the upper arm to the base. So whenever I move the base around, the upper arm is moving as well, so I don't have to animate it separately. So how you can do that is you basically link the upper arm to the base. So you click on this one, and then you point at where you want to parent it. And once you let go, you will see that it's parented to base. So as soon as let me just solo that and that. As soon as I move that, it will follow it exactly, no matter where it's going. And this also is valid for scale. If I scale it up and down, this will also scale it with it. So it's completely linked. It's not true for opacity though. Opacity is separate. And in case you're wondering how fast I can choose the properties, shortcuts. Before investing into a new machine, invest in your brain and learn shortcuts, because they allow you to be so much faster in After Effects, faster than probably any processor is available. Of course,
I must admit, shortcuts in After Effects is one area that I've kind of not divulged into too far. So things like T for opacity, and like those types of things. In terms of canvas-based shortcuts, absolutely. But going into the effects, I don't know why, but I just find it so much easier.
Super important.
Like mental clarity to see everything and to know what's different, what's changed. But maybe you might show a different way that will get me on board with this.
I totally understand. I mean, and I'm running at the resolution that is, although it's Retina, it equals 1920 by I think to 1080 or something. Let me see. Yeah, it looks like 1080. Yeah, exactly. So that means my screen real estate is pretty small. As you can see, we only have about 11 layers here, but already, if I flip open just 2 parameters, I'm almost at the end of my layer, right? Of my window here, right? Because I don't have any more room. Usually, I'm running it at a 4K resolution, so it gives you a little bit more room. But still, if you have more than 20, 30 layers, you just don't want to open everything up and scroll through that. You want to just see the thing that you animate. That's why it's very important to know the shortcuts. And I'll go through them really quickly because they're very easy to memorize, and I'll give you the hints along the way. So if I just close this one down here as well. So P for position, it's obvious, right? So you can memorize that. So if you hit P for position, S for scale, R for rotation, T for not opacity, but think of transparency, right? So this is how you can memorize it. M for masks.
Opacity, as it's been mentioned in the chat.
Say that?
Topacity.
Topacity, yeah.
In the chat.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many ways to memorize it, but it works. If you would have like a mask on this one, let's draw a quick mask. And then you will see that the mask pops up. But if you want to open up the mask, it's M for mask. And if you want to see more mask parameters, it's like MM, because more mask, right?
Got it.
So it gives you all the feathering options, so you can feather all that stuff. Let's get rid of that as well. And A for anchor point, right? So these are super easy to memorize, and you can also combine them with shift. So for example, if you want to animate position and scale, I would hit P for position and hit shift S to add scale to that, right?
Okay, that's probably the killer tip I was missing, being able to combine them together, because I always found that I'd work on one thing and then I'd have to close it down and then open another one. But seeing them, how they interact separately, yeah, that's a great one.
It's all about speed, right? I mean, look, if you want to animate the property position, right? Without shortcuts, you would do this. Okay, click that little thing, tool that open. There's position. Okay, you hit a keyframe. Okay, instead, just hitting P, hit a keyframe, hit P again. Bam! It's like, I don't know, it's like 4 times faster, I would say. Add this all up, and you'll be home 1 hour earlier, or you can work 1 hour longer. It depends on your priorities, but. This is like super helpful. Another thing is the U key. Okay, so if you hit U, it will show you all the keyframes. So let's pretend I have these 3 keyframes here: position, scale, rotation. And I hit U, it will close down the layer. And if I hit U again, it will show you all the keyframes. No matter what keyframes, it will show you all the keyframes. And if you double tap U, it will show you all the keyframes and the things that have been changed from the default setting of the layer, right? So even if it's not animated or with a keyframe, if it has been changed from the default value, then it will show you. So this is good to reverse. And if you get a project or a tutorial file and you want to reverse engineer it, this is the way you can do that quite nicely.
Yeah. There was a comment earlier about the layer boundings. So at the moment we've imported this PSD and retained the layer size. That was correct, right? It's not the canvas size. If you did it the other way around and you started working on the project and then you decided, you know what, this layer would actually benefit from having its own sort of close bounding box. Is there a way to convert the two? Or to crop in on a layer?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, so it's quite important to make that distinction early on.
Technically, you could import it again and then replace that file. But then again, this would shift the anchor point, right? For example, if you look at the position values of each of these layers, they all have different position values, right? If you leave the comp size, they would all have the middle. So it's 960 times 540. So that's a fundamental difference in terms of how you set up stuff. And if you replace that layer, all of a sudden it will be shifted to the other side, because it was, the anchor point is still going to be the same, but the position is going to be a different one. So it's a tricky one. So you should make up your mind on what you want to do in advance as early as possible, because some things are difficult to change especially after you've animated stuff. I mean, once we're done with this one, just going in and replacing something could be a little bit more tricky. I mean, not impossible, but then again, the complexity is just rising, and might be unnecessary.
Yeah.
All right. So let's pretend that we have this upper arm that needs to be rotated. Okay. So I hit R for rotation. I want to rotate it. Of course, the rotation is from the middle, because that's where the anchor point sits, and we don't want that. So how can we change that? Well, we can zoom in and out is okay. I don't know if it's the same for, it is the same for the UK or the English version. So it's comma and a colon, I think. Not sure if it's the same for the keyboard. But then again, learn the shortcut to zoom in and out, because you don't want to always go in here and click there. So again, it's faster to do just this with the keyboard, because one hand is always on the keyboard anyway. Okay, so we have the anchor point that is here in the middle, and we can change the anchor point to this point in the middle that I've created in Photoshop just as a kind of a guide. So I know where it sits, so it's kind of a little bit of a cheat. To change the anchor point, I can choose the pan behind or anchor point tool and grab this anchor point and place it pretty much as good as I can in the middle. Something like that. And we
really
can test it.
That you've added that little pinpoint in the actual artwork itself. Do you do that often, where you sort of hide little notes to yourself that the viewer would be none the wiser about?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes I also hide Easter eggs in the work, like names and dates and stuff like that.
Serial numbers on technology that's actually some sort of meaningful thing, inside joke. Nice.
Fun fact, for the German stream that is coming up in about 2 hours, that I'll be doing as well, it's going to be more on the basics side of things, so even more basic than what we do now. But I created this logo for that from scratch, and it's made in Munich and since 78, so you can figure out what that means.
It's when skateboarding was invented, of course.
Yes. All right, so we have that that is sorted, and now we can do the same thing for the forearm. So go to the forearm, change the anchor point tool. Oh, actually, you know what? I need the disc, and now I can do that. Make sure it's in the middle, and then let's look at the fingers. Oh yeah, and it's also something that I use quite often, the solo button. It helps you to make sure that you only see the layer that is soloed. So that doesn't mean that the other layers are deleted or not existent, but they're just not shown, they're not visible. And this is just for the work. Sometimes it's easier. I mean, of course you can hold down like these buttons here to hide everything else, but it takes longer to hide everything else. If you just want to see the finger, then you click one button instead of clicking 10 buttons. All right, so the finger has to go here. The finger rear has to go here, I would say.
So essentially your process is going through all of the artwork, setting up all of your joints and positional or rather ideas of where you'd like to move your position. And then presumably later you'll then go through the keyframes and do the animation, and you're kind of setting your tasks in batches.
Exactly, yeah. So there's no animation involved for quite a while. But that's the beauty of it. You basically, the animation is like the reward. The reward for the pre-work that you do.
Doing all the legwork first.
Yes, exactly. So let's take a look. So for this one, we can also offset the anchor point off in terms of off from the actual layer itself. You know, the layer stops here, but we can change the anchor point to be also off from the layer, right? Because it's obviously, it should rotate around this inner channel, or I don't know, whatever this should be. So if we move that one, this will move around this area. But of course, the fingers are not parented, so we're gonna take care of that. So the finger rear and the finger front. So the front should follow the rear, and the rear should follow the claw base. The same for the finger 2. Follow the rear, and rear should follow the base, right? So if you move it now, okay, you can see that it's now perfectly parented. And if we move the finger rear, the other finger will move as well accordingly, right? So this is the setup that we have. Now, what is not set up is the forearm. So we need to make sure that when the upper arm moves, the forearm moves with it. So I'm gonna parent the forearm to the upper arm. So this is our chain. Forearm is to the upper arm, the claw is to the forearm, and the fingers are to the claw. Okay, it's all right here, you can see. And of course, you can also click here and choose what you want to parent it to, but I think it's just nice and visual to do it with this thingy here. Pick whip, yeah. All right, so we can test that and see if it works. So P for the keyframe here, or for the position parameters. Okay, almost, right? Because we forgot to attach the claw to the forearm. So we're gonna do that. Once that is done, okay, almost done. The discs are still not attached, so we're gonna do that. The disc will be attached to the upper arm, and the upper arm disc is gonna be attached to the base, okay? So these things. And now if we move everything looks fine. Isolated so you can see it better. So all good. Whew. Almost done, but we haven't animated yet. But we're getting there. Just bear with me.
It proves how much of the sort of admin side of things, the scaffolding, all the structural integrity, just makes sure that the end outcome is so valuable and a higher quality.
Exactly. So what we want to do is, let's say this arm is coming in and is moving into place, and then is extending and reaching for something, and maybe grab something, or at least be able to move the fingers around and everything. So what we see here is, if you look at the canvas, it's too small. So I can hit Command K or Control K on Windows, and we can extend the canvas. So let's make it, I don't know, let's make it 2K. Maybe even bigger. Actually, you know what? I think it's big enough, as long as we move everything up. Can do it very easily now. And if you look at the upper arm and rotate it down, it's almost big enough. So let's make it 2,200. Oops, why is the disk not moving? Right. Sorry. Upper arm disk to the upper arm. Now it's okay. So if we move this up and make it larger, and we can say from where it should move the canvas. Let's do 2,200.
So in the greater structure of things, so this is its own composition that will then later go into the background. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. So let's see if I extend that down. Yeah, we have enough room. So everything is within that comp, and I don't need to worry about, the comp being some weird fancy size. Technically, you can set it up to anything that you want, as long as the target output is the target composition is then what you actually need it for. So I don't think this would work on YouTube as it is, but you can then place this composition into another composition that then has the proper dimensions, let's say 1920 times 1080 or 4K or whatever you want. So I'm not worrying. I'm looking at this as a purely artistic, like technical, everything needs to be in their kind of comp, and then I worry later on and make sure that it's all working nicely. So this is done, and I think we can get going with some animation tips and tricks, and also with some tips regarding the actual animation. So let's check it out. So if we rotate this will follow fine. If we rotate this will follow fine. So here we already can do a lot of cool animation in moving all the joints independently. But one thing I would like to do is to actually do do a little trick with how I want to animate the fingers, because the fingers are 4 layers, and I don't want to animate 4 layers. I just want to animate 1 parameter. So there's a couple of things that you can do with that, and here it gets a little bit more advanced. So we're going to do a new layer. We're going to create a new null object, and we're going to call this null object control. Okay, control. And then I'm going to add an effect to it that you can't see. And a null object is, again, something that you can't see. It just sits there, but it's just like a carrier for whatever you want to do. Or you can attach things to null objects. So that's also a good.
I always think of them as like a thought on the canvas. It's just, here's where you add all your brain space, and any sort of movement or idea goes into the null object.
But the good thing is that what you also can do is you can also attach layers to null objects and parent them to null objects. So technically, you could say you want everything to be controlled by this null object. So you could technically attach the base to the null object, and as soon as you move the null object, everything will follow that. And this is how you can do multiple animations in terms of, I do it a lot for typography animations when you want to scale something. But the animation in the typography happens as well without the scaling, right? So you don't want to animate 2 parameters, but attach everything to the scale. So you have 1 null object that's doing the constant scaling, and everything is attached to that. Could be a logo, could be multiple layers of fonts or text. But we don't want to do this here. We want to do an effect onto the null object, and that null object is going to be our carrier for something that is called slider control. And I'm using a free plugin, and it's called Effects Console, because again, it's about saving time, and time is of the essence. So we don't want to go in there and type in here a slider, and then you have to scroll down, and then you find it. Instead, you can select a layer and hit the shortcut. In my case, it's Shift Space, just like Spotlight on the Mac. It will pop up, and you can just type in whatever, and then if you hit enter, then it will be applied. So it's a free plugin from Video Copilot, FX Console. So check that out if you haven't. I can't live without it, to be honest.
It's interesting that After Effects, of all of the Adobe apps, it seems, has the greatest plugin community. Like, there are a lot of plugins available for other applications as well, but it seems that After Effects has just such a library available. You can get lost down all of these things. Like, one of my favorite ones that I use is a mapping plugin, and you can like animate maps, and it takes in the data from Google Maps and then can do 3D rendering of things. It's just,
is it from AS Scripts?
Yes, wildly powerful. And yeah, just plug into existing software. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, because I mean, After Effects can do many things out of the box, and we all use, I mean, out of the box stuff for this project here, but being able to expand it with so many tools is just is the beauty of it, to be honest.
And even hand coding things. So a lot of the stuff that I've built in the expressions script, it's all just JavaScript. And in fact, the first time I was using it, I wasn't even sure what the language was. And so I just started coding some things, and I was like, well, it's working. But I was thinking, well, you know, I'm kind of using jQuery principles. I'm sort of using some PHP principles. And then I kind of looked into it and was like, oh no, this is fully JavaScript available. And then once you know that, you can just go and, you know, if you know the language, you can just go and write away as heart's content.
I have no idea about JavaScript, to be honest.
It's easier than it seems. It's there's it looks intimidating, but again, get down the basic principles and away you go.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. All right. So we've added slider control here, and slider control is basically just a slider that will allow you to output values, right? Random values from 0 to, I think it's unlimited. So we've learned that you can parent layers to another layer, but you can also parent values to other values. So that means if we look at the finger rear, for example, okay, if we twirl open rotation for the finger, we can hit the stopwatch icon here by holding down the Option key, right? By holding down the Option key, it will create an expression, right? So this way we get this pick whip tool here, and then we can, while it's active, click and drag and hold and direct it towards the slider. So that means, again, this is some coding, but visual coding in terms of the way it's been created. So whatever is in this value should be in this value. So if I type in 2, it will have 2. And if I move this, you will see that this will move. Okay, so this is how I can control one value with a slider control. So you might be saying, hey, Robert, good for you, but you could still just animate rotation. Yeah. So I say, yes, that's true. But now the magic starts to happen, because now I can go in and say, hey, you know what? I want to have the same thing for this one. So again, hold down, click Option, Control, and to the slider.
So now you should get a full.
Now I get this.
Nice.
It's nice, but it's not nice, because it's not what we want. Okay. So I was not too good at maths, but a few things I remember. And if you look at this expression here, this will output the same value, but you want the negative value, right? So one should be plus, one should be minus. Yeah. If this goes 2 degrees plus, this should be 2 degrees minus. So what we can do is we can click in the expression window and we can multiply this with a -1. Okay, so multiply -1. And now this happens.
Magic of maths.
Okay, so only by animating one controller. But now let's animate also the fingers in the front. Okay, I want them also to close in, and this is very easy, because if you look at the finger here and the finger here, again, I can parent this with the Option key and direct it to this value, and this one to this value. Okay, so as soon as I've done that, this will happen. Okay, of course this looks unnatural, but I mean technically it could be like the resting position, and then it will just go in like this, and this is how you can map it. So we can then, you know, create a keyframe here. Let's say after 1 second, or I don't know, 2 seconds. it should open up like this. Okay. And
you're just setting your keyframes.
Yeah.
I think some people might be starting to get a little bit confused on this. This is where it starts to, it all comes alive. It will make sense at the end. But yeah, these are your keyframes of transition points, right?
Yes. So each keyframe basically is saving this parameter at this point of time. So at 2 seconds, I'm at 15 degrees, which is technically closed, almost closed. And then at 3 seconds, I have it at minus 19 degrees. So in this 1 second, it will animate from this parameter to this parameter. And yeah, and this is how you can animate that. So basically, that is all being taken care of. And now all we need to do is animate the upper arm. So let's say it should be in this position, minus, let's say make it minus 90. I set a keyframe, and then within 1 second, it should animate to, I don't know, maybe to here. And the same for the forearm. So let's say it should be, I don't know, it should start like this. And I don't worry too much about being off frame here. And then I animate it to be, maybe it picks up something from the top. And then it moves down. Maybe to here.
It's like choreography. You're just choosing your dance position.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a plan what it should do. You know, I mean, if I, you know, you could have something that it should grab or so.
But that's the flexibility of all the anchor points, is that you can position it anywhere you want, and because it's all connected, it's just gonna continue to flow naturally. And even as you're manually doing that, there you can see like almost a bit of a fluidity to it, which I'm hoping we might get to as well, with possibly, not want to spoil the magic, but with the graph editor.
Yep. Absolutely. So let me just add another keyframe here. So
just a question here with putting the keyframes in. So I can see that the keyframes are being added as you're just making changes. Is there a way to enable or disable that if you were to, you know, just test the movement of things, but you didn't want a keyframe added? Because you can also manually add them as well, right?
Yeah, you can manually add them as soon as you change the position. So, I mean, I can add keyframes like this, or I can add keyframes like this if I just move this one, and then this keyframe will be automatically added, because obviously where there's no keyframe and you change the attribute, it needs to add a keyframe, right? As long as you have keyframes enabled. But if you, let's say if you disable keyframes, then you can change it and it will not add a keyframe. But as soon as you have keyframes enabled, it will always add a keyframe once you change the attributes at a given time. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, so as you pointed out correctly, it's all very linear and not really aesthetic, and probably most of these robotic arms and machines are like everything moves super fast in and then slows down, and then it grabs something, and then, you know, it's like almost choreographed. So we can do that very easily. So we're going to start by selecting those two keyframes, control click or right click, and then say easy ease out. You have to memorize it this way, that out is at the beginning and in is at the end. It's the way how the animation should flow. That's why it's called ease ease and ease out. And then the same, control click, ease ease in. So what that does instantly, and let me just reduce the preview area to this section here. This will do a slow start and a slow stop. If you look at the motion itself, you will see that it's not a linear, like here. Linear, it's like no movement, full speed, stop.
It's like the laws of acceleration is
exactly. And we can extend that if we grab those two keyframes here, you can extend that as well, and also make it much smoother, so maybe, I don't know, maybe a faster start and a slow end, and this will look like this then. Okay, it will end super slow.
It's alive.
It is alive. It's like a Frankenstein moment. Okay, and the same for this one. Let's make it super smooth on the end. Okay, and then
I love how this has all come together from what is essentially a flat image, and just through the power of just cutting out, really. It's, if we transition this into a real world environment, cut something out, put some drawing pins through something and spin it around. Those are your anchor points. And did you ever do any stop motion animation when you were younger, or even now, maybe?
Not now. I mean, yes, actually I do with the kids, but just for playing purposes. Teaching them, stop motion stuff. They're super excited and freak out by seeing things come alive. It's quite nice to see, but haven't done that for commercial purposes in a while. But played around with it a lot during my studies and in the early beginnings, and yeah, would be nice to do that again. But it's a super tedious process. I mean, doing everything frame by frame is the luxury of interpolation is quite nice.
Yeah, definitely. And just even Command Z, undo it.
Absolutely, you don't have that in the real world. Okay, so I'm just animating it like this. And we can also do that here, and we might get away with easy eases for the claw.
Nice. There's like a real softness to the motion, almost like a bounce.
Well, a bounce, you could also, actually, it's a good point. If you want to do a bounce, let's add a bounce here. So let's say this would be like a totally different way of animating it. So what you could do is, if you zoom in onto the keyframes here, you could do like an anticipation. It's like the rules of animation. You can Google that. Disney has a few of them. It's like one of this is exaggeration, anticipation, which means that if you want to move into one direction, if my hand should move in this direction, what you can do is that it goes in this direction first, and then it moves into this direction. So like this,
like a backswing.
The anticipation, and we can do just that and move it up. Okay, and
I guess you could exaggerate that as well for a more sort of comical effect.
So this would be it. You could do that. Okay, like this.
I've got a question actually. How do you work in terms of your positions and transitions? Do you go through a process of adding things like these fluid motions as you go, or would you set all of your positions and then do your fluidity, or how do you go to work?
First, I mean, the easing process, manipulating those curves is always second or last. It's mostly like blocking out what you want, get a rough timing, lay out everything that you want, just to get a basic understanding of where you want to go. And then once you're happy with that, and maybe signed it off with the client, and then you go back and and then change it.
And I imagine a lot of this would have been storyboarded as well. You had a direct narrative. It's going to go here, pick up this, and yeah.
So this would be like this bounce. I don't know if it translates well, but basically the way it works is we are at -25, then 1 or 2 frames ahead we are at -27, and then we're at -25 again. Okay, so it just goes a little bit into the other direction, like it snaps in. Could also work really nice, but then you should apply this type of movement for all the other keyframes. So why should it be like it's either smooth or it's like rigid.
Yeah, it depends on the emotion that you want to convey with it.
Exactly. But I
There's
mean,
also
this
a
is
question here on the transitions with your keyframes. Are they timed to where they need to be in relation to the script, or in the voiceover? Like, at what level do you, I guess, have like a optical, this makes sense optically, even though it's actually out of time or out of sync?
There's really no rule, unless, I mean, you have to, the main thing is, what do you want to communicate, right? If let's pretend this would be like a client project, and you would say this robot is building the word, I don't know, the words get vaccinated or whatever, right? And it would pick up all those little, the G, the E, the T, and whatever, and it would put it all in line. Then the script would say like, okay, we have like a 15-second animation, and in 15 seconds this has to be built, and you have to make sure that it looks pleasing and aesthetically nice, and then you align the keyframes to whatever makes sense. There's no real right or wrong. There's maybe a little too fast or too slow, but I just do it on the fly, and the way I, just on the go, and see how it looks nice. There's, it might be that I shift things around, and, you could also shift that around, that maybe, this arm they're not completely aligned, but, this will give also some visual interest, that it's not always moving at the same time. We could move the claw as well. So it's just literally like a free floating process, whatever looks nice. So there's no right or wrong, as long as you communicate what needs to be communicated or what you want to communicate.
Nice.
So
I guess that's one area I potentially, because I like to work within guidelines and grids on things, especially when it comes to title designs and templating that work. Sometimes I can hold myself a little too rigidly on, this has to be a second animation, and this bit is 1.5, and I'll try and maintain consistency across a whole group of things. And then as I go through the project, I'm like, it's just not feeling right. And then I come back and I think, I should probably just change this slightly because it doesn't feel correct. But throughout that whole project, I've maintained that rigidity, and at times it can benefit you, and other times it holds you back.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, typography is like a different thing, because you have to have like the, what you call it, raster, like the what do you call it in English? The grid. The grid.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A lot of it is grid based. Everything has to be somewhat aligned. So there's more rules to follow. Whereas the rules of animation are more like the things that I've mentioned before. The principles of animation. Everyone should Google that, Disney and the principles of animation. You see like a good overview of all the different things of anticipation, exaggeration, squash and stretch. If a ball bounces, then it will be stretched, and you can exaggerate that to convey more dynamic and motion and stuff like that. So these are more of the rules, but in terms of timing, it's just to get a feel for it, what looks good. And I'm not saying that this looks perfect or good in any way. It's just like moving randomly around, and what could be nice, but we don't have like a proper concept for this one. It's more like a tech demo. But there's a few things I also wanted to do before we wrap it up, because I wanted to show you one or two more things really quickly. You see the forearm, they're not moving, and I want to do some movement for these. So what I can do is I can create, again, Option key and link it to the rotation, and then type multiply it with 3, let's say, okay? And this will give this nice motion to it, right? So that this thing here in the middle is counter moving.
Shows that
it's
working.
It's moving more, like it's moving 3 times more in the negative area. So this looks really nice.
Such a fine detail, but makes a huge difference.
You see that? I just like it, the way it, like,
And I
and
guess
now
if you're working with an actual 3D object as well, you could use lighting controls and play even more to the realism of it.
absolutely. One thing I would like to add to that is motion blur. Just add it with the buttons here, and as soon as you've applied that, it will apply to all the layers, and it will look more natural in terms of fluidity and motion. All right, we're almost there. I've imported a stock image from Adobe, and now I'm going to create a canvas that is proper HD. In this case, I can also choose a preset. I can choose this if you want. I have to make sure that the frame rate matches. I've chosen 30 FPS for this one, so this one should be 30 as well. So, and now I can just put my robotic arm in there. So here you see the arm, it's doing its thing, and I can align it. And this is the beauty of having comps, I can make it smaller like this, and then I will add this one. Okay, and you can see it's mismatching the colors. So what we can do for the robotic arm is I can add the lumetri and go to the color wheels and add some of that cool blues in there, so it matches the actual tones of the background. But now everything is like one pixel, blah, whatever. Doesn't look good. So what we can do is to add some more focus is we can blur the layer. And I wouldn't do the Gaussian blur because it's optically not correct. And again, this is something that you learn with the camera, that if you look at a Christmas tree and you defocus it, what will happen to the lights? The lights will start to bloom and grow, and this is the beauty of bokeh. Whereas with the proper blur, the lights will be smaller. So it's a fundamental difference in the look and the behavior of that. So we're gonna do the camera lens blur effect and do it to, I don't know, like 20 something. Again, there's no right or wrong. So this looks nice. I want to make sure that this arm is actually, you know what? It should start here and then it should move into place like here. And I don't know, maybe you can see here that it's still, we cut it off a little bit. So I'm gonna move the arm more to the middle. Actually, you know what? Let me just make it bigger. And if we go back to the comp, it's already there. So we're not cutting it off.
So it's as if it's coming in on like a overhead rail of some sort.
Exactly. So let's ease that out and make it really smooth, like maximum slow down. And it starts to move, picks up something from the roof, puts it down, thinks about it. It has its own personality. Look at it. What are we gonna call it?
It's like one of those grabber things in the arcades.
Oh, and of course motion blur here as well.
So there's a comment here, I love it, but I still don't understand it.
You could watch it frame by frame, and then you could just redo it with a bunch of simple layers. It doesn't have to be a robotic arm, or just quickly draw something up and then.
I mean, this is impressive that this has been built and discussed about and explained in the process of an hour, really. The whole thing, and it works and shows a fluidity to it. There's definitely a lot of repaid value to go back and see how it was all pieced together. Now that you've seen the end product, you could go back and rewatch it for sure.
So we're going to do something here that is like in the foreground. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit too much here. Maybe I want to have it so we have some room here. Just to give some visual interest, we're going to copy the lens blur to this one, as well as the lumetri
Nice.
Copy and
Yeah,
paste.
just
So
a
we
bit
have
more
something
depth.
in the foreground. Now you could also shift it to here. I don't know, like give more depth to it, and yeah, something like that. So a couple of things. Maybe we have, after we finish this next tip, I quickly want to show you the new 3D features. Actually, they're pretty straightforward and fast to show. But one thing I wanted to show before we wrap it off is the actual rendering and the techniques that it involves outputting your file. So what I usually do is I add it to my render queue, and I usually have my templates here, and usually I choose ProRes 4444 as a master, and then once I have that, I can go through Adobe Media Encoder to encode all the little variations of that, like the highly compressed, less compressed, and so on. But during my workflow, when sending approval files to the client, one thing I do is not using the render queue, but instead going to composition and add that to the Adobe Media Encoder queue. And the benefits of using that, you will see that this will be added into the media encoder, hopefully. Then what you can do with this is you can not only render it in the media encoder, but you can also encode it. So it will render the files as well as encode them into something
nice,
more handy, like an H.264 or H.265, like the high efficiency video codec, the HEVC. And this way, it allows you to have two steps in one. Let me just save that. Maybe that has to be saved. I'm just call it Robo Temp and send it again to the media encoder. Sometimes it takes a while until it's being shown, and also just restarted and reinstalled media encoder. It will pop up here. And one of the things that I always do is if it's towards the lunch break or towards the end of the day, I set up it like a daily render queue. So multiple versions of compositions that I have. And the same goes for Premiere Pro, by the way. And what you can do here in the media encoder as well is to specify what it should do after it has finished encoding and rendering the file. So that means that what I usually do is I have a Vimeo Pro account. I set up that after it has finished encoding, it should upload automatically. And this way I will also notify by email via Vimeo that your file is ready. All I have to do is I pre-format the email to the client. Here's the latest preview. And, I could be off having lunch or,
nice.
Playing or, playing with the kids or sleeping or working on another project or whatever, while it's doing its thing, rendering, encoding, and uploading, while you have to do nothing. And this will save you a tremendous amount of time.
So you've built a robot to work for you and to do all the automations in the workflow.
Exactly.
I love it.
That's it. Yeah.
So we are just coming up to the 90-minute mark. If you wanted to quickly run through this 3D thing, I'm intrigued by it because I've seen little snippets of it, but I haven't actually seen it being worked on.
It's actually straightforward, so we shouldn't have more than 5 minutes with this. So one of the changes is that the toolbar here in your composition window has been cleaned up a little bit. So if you don't have any 3D, then you don't see any 3D relevant. By the way, Media Encoder has now just popped up with our stuff here, and now I can show you what I meant. So you can see that at least with the German version of Media Encoder, again, because everything is set up on German for me for my pipeline. So let me just load that. While it's loading this in the background, I will carry on with the 3D stuff. So as soon as we hit 3D to these layers, you saw that pop up here, right? So that's quite nice because it's giving you the Media Encoder wants its attention.
Look at me.
Yeah, so sorry about that. So let's go back to Media Encoder. And now if you go to publish, it's the last button here. You will see like all the publishing options that you have. You can publish it to the Creative Cloud folder, to stock, Behance, Facebook, FTP, Twitter, Vimeo, YouTube. And all you have to do is click on that button here. I've been logged in. And all I have to do is, privacy just for myself or everyone with a password. Type in a password, click OK, and then off you go. You can leave the computer and this will be rendered, encoded, and uploaded for you, which is pretty crazy. All right, back to After Effects and 3D. So you've seen that we've enabled 3D for all those layers, which means that you get the 3D gizmo that you not only have the X and the Y axis, but also the Z axis. And if we add a camera in here, let's say we do like a wide angle camera. And let's say the skateboard should be, I don't know, more to the front as well as the skaters. So let's pull this towards us like this. Okay, something like that. And the background should be, let's go to the custom view 1 so you can see that a little bit better. We push this one back, okay? But if you look through the camera, you will see that the canvas is now too small, or the image is too small, but we can enlarge that because it's now in the background. But if I move my camera around now, let's make it a little bit bigger. You will see that we get this nice parallax effect. And one of the new features, and you can see it stutters a little bit. I have a pretty decent graphics card, but the good thing is that you have Draft 3D now, and you can see it's super fluid now.
Nice.
And Draft 3D means that it's not using it to render. You can't render with this. It's just for working. If you have multiple 3D layers in your comp and you want to navigate around, this will be a lot faster, and you can see
allows you to experiment a bit more. And
absolutely, yeah. So that's a welcome and a little bit due change, but finally it's here, and it helps you speed up your workflow quite a bit. And also it will show you, like, if you enable this button here, this will show you the 3D ground plane, so you can orient yourself a little bit better if you add 3D objects to your layers. So that's basically the change, and I think it's pretty. It's small, but it's very effective.
This is worthy of a whole stream in itself, definitely. My mind is kind of being blown. I've got all these ideas sparking of like all these images that I've got where I can take certain elements and convert them to 3D. Like
it's super easy. Just create I don't know, keyframe here and here, and let's turn that off and just we'll play that back. You can see this,
Nice.
Looks like a frozen in time.
Could work as like a background for some text and all sorts.
Yep.
Robert, this has been amazing. Very, very informative. So many pieces of information and tips along the way. I've definitely learnt a lot, and the chat has been following as close as possible. I know there's a few people who may be struggling with it because After Effects isn't the their primary tool of choice, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of intrigue to go and try it someday, and this has definitely proved that you can make a robotic arm in an hour and a half. Amazing. Thank you so much. Think of it as Photoshop with a timeline. Technically, absolutely. It's the same thing. So this has been great. I'm sorry we've run over a little bit of time. Hopefully we can come back and do some 3D work on other things with After Effects. It's been great to be going through After Effects, that's one thing for sure. And likewise, there will be continued conversation in the Discord chat. So there's quite an active community on there if you want to join in and get to know some of the other creatives and regular viewers and participants of the Adobe live stream. And this has been great, Robert. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon in another stream.
thank you for the community for joining, and hope to see you soon as well.
Thanks very much. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Silence in this reverie, victim of our cards. I'm running in the dark, I venture into nothing. Master of the sun, master of the sun.